So once you have there's 4 screws in the back of the Miata, so in these little divots, one here, one on the other side, you can actually pull the airbag out. Be very careful, and then unhook that plug. That will turn the airbag off. Okay, once you get the airbag out, again, there's 4 screws in the back that you get to. They're 10 millimeters. Get to those, you got to take this nut off here. This nut is a 21 millimeter. Once you pull that out, then you'll kind of bang on the sides. You'll be able to pull that back from there. So to get the actual steering wheel off, the best way to do it is to hit it top and bottom, left and right, and just kind of yank and shake back and forth for a good while. A couple good pulls and you'll be able to pull it off. Once you get to this part, you'll have the splines off. You do want to line these 2 tabs up with these 2 holes in the back. That is for your clock spring. That's to make sure your turn signals still work afterwards. So once you kind of get those lined up, this will, with a little finagling here, you'll be able to get those to slide on. Once that's on, you just take the nut back, tighten that back up there. You do want to use an impact for this, just because if you try to use a wrench, you're just going to be turning the front wheels. So get that knocked out. Once you do that, then the actual wheel, the steering wheel, can bolt on from there. Another tip, and I kind of forgot, but make sure when you take it off to figure out which way, this left and right, that the steering wheel is. If you keep it perfectly straight and you put the wheel on perfectly straight, then in theory the steering wheel should be aimed perfectly straight when you go to do it again. Okay, so once you get to this point where you have the hub on here, there is one thing. Make sure there's 2 prongs in the back. Make sure those are up and down. Those are your turn signal, I guess deactivators, whatever you want to call them, to get the turn signal to turn off correctly when you turn back from left or right. One other thing, so when you're doing the steering wheel, obviously you want to make sure, of course, that when you pull it in, park the car as perfectly straight as you possibly can. That way, when you put the wheel on, you don't have to go readjust it 10 times because you had it too far off one way or the other. On top of that, if you are doing a quick release adapter, which in this case we are, one thing I definitely suggest, okay, would be when you have this adapter, you can separate the actual adapter piece, which bolts to the back of the wheel, and this piece. You have to have this piece separate to screw it onto here, okay? One thing, the steering wheel obviously locks in. There's all these little dots, or dimples. You got 2 that are kind of offset. That is what makes sure the steering wheel locks in a certain direction. What I always recommend doing is attaching these together. Hold on. Okay, attaching these together and then attaching typically I guess you would attach the wheel first, because then you can make sure the wheel is straight up and down and have these circles straight up and down, because if not, you separate this, you have this one way too far one way to the other, then when you put the steering wheel on, it's not actually going to snap into the quick release adapter the correct orientation straight up and down. So I always recommend attaching the steering wheel to the adapter, lining everything up, and then pulling off the back, matching which way that these are set. That way you can correctly orientate the steering wheel when you put it back on. Once you got that on there, just make sure these are all very tight. You don't want to over tighten them. They are small bolts and they are Allen keys, but just make sure those are obviously quite snug. Make sure that you tighten up all of these very tight to the quick release, and then once you got it, it'll pop on there, and yeah, and then you are done. And that's how to put on a quick release steering wheel.